Hello, my name is Russell Myers. Welcome to Issues Unite. People have been talking about the trench warfare going on in Ukraine, but they have kind of a misconception of exactly what this entails. Uh, so when they think of trench warfare, they think of a foxhole 2 to 3 feet deep with sandbags up in front, and these are actually a thing. I mean, yes, these are used, but those are forward, you know, positions that are hastily constructed. Those are temporary entrenchments. Then you go back a bit further, and you got the traditional trench that is maybe 8 to 12 feet deep. You might have enclosures that are covered, shored up with wood and covered with soil, several feet of soil to protect forces from artillery and so forth and so on. But going back all the way to World War I, where traditional trench warfare began, even back then, it went a lot further than that. Many trenches are concrete reinforced. They are reinforcements, barriers, protective structures, and so forth and so on. They have enclosures up at the top where a soldier can fire from a protected position, and these are made of metal or concrete. And some sources have been showing some of this. So, and these are lines of defense. And before you even get to those trenches, you got anti-tank trenches, which are much broader and generally pretty deep, that a tank cannot cross. And then you've got concrete dragon's teeth, concrete piles that are meant to stop tanks and to break up and channel, for any ground forces from being able to get through, to channel them through certain areas. The New Atlas did a wonderful explanation of some of this. But trenches actually become much more elaborate. And back in World War I, the Germans built very elaborate trenches. And then on the Eastern Front, during World War I, there were trenches that were, and they're considered trenches, that were 80 feet deep, concrete reinforced, and would house tens of thousands of soldiers in a protective environment. Even in World War I, back behind the trenches, they literally operated farms and grew animals for food and had places for cooking and so forth and so on. But, how long that lasted, especially in the winter, how much good it did. But they tried to actually provide fresh food for the frontline troops and things like this. So it's a lot more elaborate than you might think it is. There's a lot of history to be looked at here. A good source for this would be to watch the Great War series, although that is a long series. That is a long series to watch. But the one thing that you can absolutely know is true, is that trench warfare is dirty. It is unhygienic. You know, disease runs rampant because it's so, you don't have good resources for disposing of human waste. It's difficult to, evacuate the injured and the deceased out of these areas. You can't really cook. Are you going to start a fire and have all the smoke? And now with infrared, you're going to expose a heat signature. Even getting sufficient food to troops on the front lines, and to reinforce them with ammunition. This is a difficult and these are dangerous tasks to engage in. Any non-combat troops that are trying to deliver food and ammo and so forth, they become targets. Medical personnel, etc. It is brutal warfare. It is a brutal form of warfare. Anyway, the main point that I was making here is that trench warfare, to a degree, is what you may envision, but it can go far above and beyond that. It's a lot more than you might think. Let's move on to a few other things. Okay, so there was a Russian position that was struck, and we're hearing numbers from Russia saying there were 63 soldiers killed, Ukraine going anywhere from 400 to 600 Russian casualties at that location. I'm with Scott Ritter on this, and I'll say, if you had, we have no idea what the real numbers are, and we're never going to know. We are never going to know. But one thing he said, and I absolutely agree with it, and I was thinking this before I ever heard his opinion. If they were actually housing Russian troops and ammunition in the same location within range of Ukrainian artillery or weapons, they were HIMARS that struck that location. But if you were housing people and ammunition in the same location, that was just foolish. Somebody should be called to account for that. But these were military personnel. I am absolutely against all loss of human life on both sides. But as far as military personnel, they are military personnel. This is warfare. People are going to die on both sides. So I'm not going to be all up in arms about this happening because this is part of warfare. If it's civilians, it's an entirely different thing. Moving on from that, Ukraine had reduced or suspended the attacks on Donetsk, a civilian city center that has no military presence, for a few days, but then they started again. So they are directly using Western weapons to attack civilian populations. What benefit is there to this? That is not a military tactic. That is literal, and they're not attacking infrastructure like directly. They're not intentionally. They may strike infrastructure, but it's a carpet bomb approach, as opposed to the Russian tactic of directly attacking military and infrastructure targets. Those are very different. I want to cover Bakhmut again. Bakhmut, the fighting that has been going on there from the Russian side is being fought by the Wagner forces. Now, the Wagner forces are a private military corporation, PMC, and they do not have, they have mortars and, you know, small arms. They don't have heavy artillery such as howitzers and, you know, missile launchers and so forth. All of the fighting, people have been acting like Ukraine is doing such a great job in Bakhmut with throwing thousands and thousands of troops into Bakhmut. But they're coming up against ground forces. So they are bringing in heavy artillery for this, and yet Ukraine has had to rotate out their forces in Bakhmut twice in 1 month. They had their initial force that had been there for some time, and a lot of their troops and equipment were depleted. So they, in early December, they rotated out for a new set of troops, probably better equipped and so forth, but poorly trained. How well they were equipped, I don't know. But 3 weeks later, they had to rotate out those troops again because those troops were so poorly depleted. And, you know, like I said, poorly trained, possibly poorly equipped. At this point, only a few days ago, they had, you know, so they rotated out from the second set, and now they're on their third set in 1 month's time in Bakhmut, and one artillery brigade or one force that was part of this refused to fight, and they retreated. So how long it takes until Bakhmut falls, I'd give it days to weeks at this point. I could be wrong. There are a lot of people saying that Russia is not winning or they're losing because they're not advancing quickly. And this is not true. What Russia said from the beginning was that a large part of their goal here was to demilitarize Ukraine. Well, they can just plant themselves along one line of contact and let the Ukrainians keep coming to them. And this is a war of attrition. It takes more forces to advance than it does to defend. Some military experts say that it takes 4 times as many troops to advance, to take territory, than it does to defend territory. Russia's not really trying to take territory. They are trying to reduce the Ukrainian military. And they can do that by just staying where they are and just let Ukraine keep feeding more and more troops into a meat grinder. But Russia has been expanding their scope of attack, they have attacked different barracks with foreign fighters in them, a drone repair depot, a drone launch airstrip, and they keep on hitting the energy infrastructure, which disables the electric trains that run across the country. Only a small fraction of Ukraine's train system runs on diesel engines, and those are ancient because they have been using electric trains for so long. That's what their system is set up for. If you knock out the electricity, you kill the trains. That's it. I was watching one channel, military summary channel, that was talking about Ukrainian and UK intelligence claiming that Russia is going to launch this massive offensive in the next few days. And I'm really not seeing that. It would be... Russia has stated they're not in a hurry. He also says that Russia is going to announce a global mobilization. Now, there is the possibility of that, but that is going to be on Russian soil, on Russian territory. That's going to be separate from the special military operation. That's going to be defensive. He also claims that there's going to be an offensive coming from Belarus. The Belarusian government has stated that they want no part of an offensive movement coming out of Belarus. The only reason that they have mobilized their military is as a defense. But the fact that they have their military activated along the front line, the border of Belarus, is in response to Ukraine sending forces up to the Belarusian border. So again, that is defensive. There has been the only sign of aggression has been one S-300 missile that was shot down over Belarus the other day, which was probably an errant anti-air missile, anti-drone strike that went awry. It was probably not an actual aggressive act. But Ukraine isn't going to admit to that either. They'll just claim that it isn't theirs, and Russia launched a missile onto their allies' territory. Ukraine just has not even commented on it. As far as attrition is concerned, we already know that the U.S. and NATO have exhausted the surplus weaponry that can be sent to Ukraine at this time. When they talk about sending a Patriot missile system, that means they're going to have to send NATO or allied forces into Ukraine to operate them. From what I have heard, to learn to operate a Patriot missile system requires 53 weeks of training. And I can believe that, because one Patriot missile, you launch one Patriot missile, and it costs $4 million for one missile. That's not the launcher, that's the missile. So how many of those are you going to just put that into a war zone and let some untrained person fire it where it's completely ineffective and may do more harm than good if it hits the wrong target. So, and so far, all I've heard is that we've only promised them one, just one, a Patriot missile launcher. So that's not supposed to be there for a while. If it gets there within the next few days, or if it's already there, then that means that there are NATO troops or allied troops that are operating that system. As far as all the howitzers and HIMARS, those are being quickly reduced in number. There have been at least 3 or 4 HIMARS systems that have been destroyed in the past week. Dozens of howitzer systems, both American and I think German, although they may be British. But you keep on reducing all of this heavy weaponry, then all you're going to be left with is ground troops. And they're not going to want to fight when they're up against heavy artillery. And that's for very good reason. Would you want to? No. All right. So, share this video. Talk about these subjects. I'm really hoping that this just comes to an end soon. Sooner or later, there has to be peace talks. Stop just feeding people into a meat grinder. Stop destroying lives. Stop destroying families. Stop. Just stop. Make sense. Make peace. All right. Again, share this video. Talk about these subjects. If you can afford it, please donate whatever you can to help expand this channel and my presidential campaign. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a good day.